Jean-Paul Marat. Jean-Paul Marat was already dangerous while he was alive. After he died, he became even more useful. Marat was not a general, and he did not need an army to frighten people. His weapon was the newspaper. Through his writing, he attacked enemies of the revolution with a fury that made him loved by radicals and hated by moderates. By 1793, France was living inside suspicion. The monarchy had fallen, war surrounded the country, political factions were destroying each other from within. In that atmosphere, Marat's words did not feel like commentary, they felt like commands. Then Charlotte Corday came to him. She believed Marat was helping drive the revolution toward chaos. She thought that if she removed him, perhaps the violence would slow. But revolutions do not always react the way assassins expect. Marat was killed on July 13, 1793. Corday had ended the man, but she had created a symbol. His supporters saw a fallen defender of the people. Corday wanted to silence Marat. Instead, she gave the revolution a martyr. And once the revolution had martyrs, the men still alive had to prove they were loyal enough not to become enemies next. 2. Jacques Hébert. Jacques Hébert believed the crowd would answer him. That belief became the first crack in his power. Hébert was one of the loudest radical voices of the revolution. Through Le Père Duchesne, he spoke in the language of insult, anger, and revenge. He knew how to turn hunger into pressure. For a time, that made him powerful. But street power is dangerous because it is never fully owned. It can rise for a man 1 month and leave him exposed the next. By early 1794, Paris was tense with shortages, fear, and political exhaustion. Hébert and his allies pushed for more radical action. He believed the sans-culottes would rise again, if called. They did not. That silence ruined him. To Robespierre and the Committee of Public Safety, Hébert had become too dangerous to tolerate, but not strong enough to fear. He was radical enough to threaten the government, but isolated enough to destroy. He was arrested with his followers. 10 days later, on March 24, 1794, they were executed. Hébert had built his power by speaking as if the people stood behind him. When the final moment came, the streets did not move. But the revolution did not only kill those who demanded more terror, it also killed the men who began asking whether terror had gone too far. 3. Georges Danton. Georges Danton was not destroyed because he was weak. He was destroyed because he could still speak. That was the danger. Danton had been one of the great voices of the revolution, a man associated with the fall of monarchy and the birth of the republic. He was bold, forceful, and impossible to ignore. But by 1794, the same voice had become a threat. Danton and his allies began to look like men who wanted the terror slowed. They were not calling for the old monarchy to return, but they were suggesting that France could not keep feeding itself on fear forever. In a revolution ruled by suspicion, moderation could look like betrayal. Danton's trial became a struggle over speech. If he was allowed to defend himself fully, he could turn the courtroom into a stage, so the system moved to silence him. On April 5, 1794, Danton was executed with his allies. The revolution had killed one of its own giants. His fate proved that past service meant nothing once the political wind changed. A man could help build the republic, help defend it, and still be removed when his voice became inconvenient. 4. Camille Desmoulins. Camille Desmoulins had once helped call the revolution into the streets. Then he tried to call it back from the edge. That change killed him. Desmoulins was one of the revolution's most important journalists. In the early days, his writing helped stir Paris. He was close to powerful men, including Danton and Robespierre. But the terror changed the meaning of speech. Words that once pushed the revolution forward could suddenly look dangerous if they asked it to slow down. In Le Vieux Cordelier, Desmoulins criticized the violence and called for clemency. He was not asking France to return to the old regime. He was asking whether the revolution had begun betraying the liberty it claimed to defend. That question was deadly. If Desmoulins was right, then the terror was not defending the revolution, it was consuming it. Friendship could not save him. Past loyalty could not save him. Talent could not save him. He was arrested with the Dantonists and executed on April 5, 1794. Desmoulins learned too late that revolutions love writers when they sharpen anger. They fear them when they awaken doubt. 5. Louis-Antoine de Saint-Just. Saint-Just was only 26 when the revolution consumed him. That youth made him more frightening, not less. He seemed like a man made entirely of certainty, cold, brilliant, disciplined, and severe, Saint-Just became one of Robespierre's closest allies. To his supporters, he looked like pure revolutionary will. To his enemies, he looked like the terror given a young face. He spoke like history had already chosen sides. That was his power. It was also his trap. Saint-Just tied himself completely to Robespierre's fate. As long as Robespierre stood, Saint-Just stood beside him. But when the convention turned against Robespierre on 9 Thermidor, certainty could not protect him. He tried to speak. The room would not let him. That silence mattered. A man who had helped give political language to the terror found himself unable to control his final scene. The next day, Saint-Just was executed with Robespierre and the others. He had believed in a republic purified through force. But force does not remain loyal to ideas. It remains available to whoever controls it next. 6. Maximilien Robespierre. Maximilien Robespierre did not die because royalists defeated him. He died because the revolution no longer felt safe with him alive. That is what makes his fate so terrifying. Robespierre had spoken for years about virtue, justice, and the people. He presented himself as the moral guardian of the revolution, the man who believed France could be purified and remade. But in the reign of terror, virtue became dangerous. To disagree could look like treason. To hesitate could look like guilt. To be accused could be enough. Robespierre did not create every part of the terror alone, but he became its most famous face. His enemies feared him. His allies feared becoming his next enemies. By the summer of 1794, men inside the convention understood something simple. If Robespierre survived, they might not. On 9 Thermidor, they turned against him. The man who had watched so many others fall suddenly found himself accused, shouted down, and arrested. The machine had reversed direction. The next day, July 28, 1794, Robespierre was executed with his allies. His fall did not only end a life, it ended the illusion that anyone could control political terror forever. Robespierre had helped make fear into government. In the end, fear governed him too. 7. Fouquier-Tinville. Fouquier-Tinville spent the terror turning accusation into punishment. Then the terror ended, and accusation turned toward him. He was not the most famous revolutionary, but few officials were more feared. As public prosecutor of the Revolutionary Tribunal, Fouquier-Tinville helped move case after case through revolutionary justice. To the accused, he was not simply a lawyer. He was the voice of a court that might decide whether they lived or died. During the terror, the tribunal became one of the revolution's most dreaded institutions. The state spoke in the language of emergency, conspiracy, and public safety. But after Robespierre fell, France needed answers. Fouquier-Tinville tried to defend himself by saying he had followed the law and obeyed the revolutionary government, but that defense exposed the horror of the system. The new order did not accept that. Fouquier-Tinville was tried, condemned, and executed on May 7, 1795. The man who had helped prosecute so many became a prisoner of the same revolutionary justice he once served. He had spent the terror asking the court to judge others. At the end, the court judged him. So, the French Revolution promised to destroy tyranny. But in its most extreme years, it learned how to destroy its leaders too. Marat became more useful after death than he had been in life. Hébert called for the streets, and the streets abandoned him. Danton's voice became too dangerous to let survive. Desmoulins asked for mercy and found none. Saint-Just tried to speak for certainty, but the room silenced him. Robespierre made fear into politics, then died when fear turned against him. Fouquier-Tinville served the tribunal, then became one of its final victims. That is the dark lesson of the revolution. It did not only fight kings, nobles, priests, and foreign armies. It turned inward. It hunted rivals. It punished doubt. It made loyalty temporary and suspicion permanent. And once terror became a system, it no longer belonged to the men who thought they controlled it. It waited. It watched. And eventually, it asked for them too.